This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Judith Mancini Today is sponsored by Basic Brands Inc., providing the highest quality specialty products in the natural food industry. Visit basicbrandsinc.com and enter JMT15 for your 15% discount on your first order, including their best-selling vitamin E ointment, which helps restore moisture and elasticity to your skin. Hello, everybody. It's Judith Mancini here on Judith Mancini Today. We're live for you, and I hope you've tuned in from the East Coast and the West Coast. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're enjoying a little lunch snack, and I hope you're having a cup of coffee if you're here on the Pacific Coast. Okay, I just want to hit a couple highlights that are in the news. Remember, these are one woman's opinions. I'm trying not to give opinions on this, but I can't help it because some of the things going on are so absolutely crazy. So first of all, I do not believe Prince Harry and Meghan at all about their car chase and how devastating and frightening it was, because you can't drive that fast in New York City or in Brooklyn. Are you crazy? You cannot go fast. It's bumper to bumper all day long from early morning before 6 a.m. until midnight. You can't go that fast. It's craziness. What are they doing calling the paparazzi to follow them around? I'm sure that's what Meghan's doing. She's trying to get her reputation back, but what kind of reputation? Boy, I'm real sorry that Harry married Meghan. She's done nothing but destroy him and feed into him how he should be angry with his family and all. Look what good it's done him. Terrible thing. I'm sorry that this has happened. I'm actually sorry for Meghan too, because she did have a job in Hollywood and now she has nothing. Writing books about your family when they're the royal family in particular is ridiculous. Going on somebody's show like Oprah Winfrey and complaining and making up racist statements is also disgusting. So I'm sorry, they're not going to be very happy living in Montecito, California. They've already said that they're having problems there. They've already changed houses once. And apparently, because I know people who live in this area, they've had a heck of a problem keeping their domestic staff. There's one more question. You know, when I used to go from California to New York to work in New York, when I owned my publishing company, I would go visit people out on Long Island and all, and I never took a cab. I had my hotel book me a car and driver every time. One, because I'm a woman and I felt safer doing that. And secondly, you just don't get some strange cab driver to take you someplace and drop you off. Usually the limo drivers are not that much more expensive than cabs back there. And usually they're vetted before they get the job. So I don't know why, if you're a prince or a former prince, I don't know what his status is, because I don't really follow the royal family, except when they do jerky things. Why would they do that? So I don't believe it. And I guess a lot of outlets, news outlets, and even on the internet, people are questioning what the heck they're talking about. So So one thing that I think is a good thing, they have banned TikTok in Montana. I haven't seen the entire article on this. I don't know if they've banned the entire app of TikTok uh, or if just for kids under 18. I'm not sure. So I want to explore that a little more, and maybe you guys can do that too. Right now, the whistleblowers are testifying in front of the House Oversight Committee subcommittee on what has been going on in the FBI. And I've been listening to it. I suggest you listen to it because this is really something that is hurting our republic. It's frightening, actually. And you've seen some of these arrests on television, but these guys were FBI agents, and because they've blown the whistle, they've lost their jobs. They can't get other jobs. They can't get any recommendations. There's all sorts of rules they have to follow if they leave the FBI. None of them did anything wrong except expose what's going on in the FBI. So tune in. It's on the cable news stations, and it's probably on C-SPAN also. And I think you should keep up with it because it impacts all of us and our freedoms and our right to free speech, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I just want to quickly go over a little review of how many people have declared to run for the nomination for President of the United States in our two main parties, that being the Republican Party and the other one being the Democratic Party. So on the Republican side, of course, we all know that former President Trump has declared that he's running for president again. But besides that, Governor DeSantis has not decided yet, but we're expecting something from him by next Tuesday to see if he will declare or if he's just going to remain being governor of Florida. One of the things is in Florida, they have a law that says if you decide to run for higher office or any other office, you have to resign your position as governor. And he loves the state of Florida, and so he's having a difficult time making up his mind. Some of the other people that have declared are Nikki Haley. She's out now. Let's see. Kristi Noem has declared, South Dakota. I may be getting my notes mixed up here. Give me 1 minute. Oh, okay. So here are the ones who have declared and backed out. Some of them, and Nikki Haley has declared. Mike Rogers from South Dakota has. Oh, excuse me, that's Mike Rogers from Michigan. Kristi Noem from South Dakota, it may declare, I'm not sure she has yet. Mike Pence is still on there. Nikki Haley's on there. Ryan Buckley is a Dallas businessman and a former somebody who ran for office before. He's a non-denominational pastor. He's a businessman and non-denominational pastor. Larry Elder, the talk show person who has declared. Asa Hutchinson, he was in Congress, and he was also somebody who was governor of Arkansas before. Perry Johnson lost a governorship in Michigan. He's declared. And Vivek Ramaswamy, who has declared early on, he was CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and he has a lot of interesting ideas. So they've all declared. Now, the ones that say maybe are Tim Scott from the senator from South Carolina, Chris Sununu, who used to be a governor of New Hampshire, and there's some talk of Kristi Noem of South Dakota. I got that, my notes a little mixed up there. Okay, the ones that have bowed out, Tom Cotton, Larry Hughes, Mike Pompeo, and Rick Scott. So those have all decided that they would not pursue the presidency. And I think that's a good idea. We've got too many people considering running in the Republican Party. So it's going to be a long convention if they all stay in. And if they do debates, which there's some debate about if they will, that's going to be a long time too. Hours. So on the Democrat side, of course, we have President Biden, who said, yes, he is going to run for office again, re-election. And we have two people already contesting him. Marianne Williamson, who is a self-help guru and written many books and is well known as a relationship coach, etc. So she has a lot of publicity, and she did try to run in the last election. And then we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's the son of the assassinated Robert F. Kennedy. And he's a bit of an outlier because he has very outspoken views on anti-vaccines and what happened to the COVID vaccines and what should be given to children and all of that. But he's also very patriotic. And when he talks, he does talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in the country and how he would help with that. So those are the people, and you should keep up with it. You should keep up and make sure your notes are written down more easy to read than mine. Okay, last week we talked about money, and what happens if you have it, what happens if you lose it, and how you can try to get it back, because all of this inflation and recession talk and not being able to get the budget for the United States out of the trillions and trillions of dollars and pay the United States bills, it's just going to get worse and all that. And I ran out of time, and I didn't have time to finish telling you some things and some tips about what happens to your estate. That's what it's called when you die without a will. So first of all, I want to tell you what I'm going to be telling you mostly applies to California, because that's where we live and that's where I've done my research. So you need to see what happens in your own state. And by the way, remember, you're always supposed to get an expert if you're going to get financial help or legal help or any other kind of help. You have to get an expert, licensed, what have you, somebody who really knows what they're talking about. And I'm basically talking to people that have maybe lost a lot of money during this upheaval in the United States with our economy, or people who have never built up a huge estate. Those people all have expert advisors, and they're covered by estate planning. But a lot of you who are just average Americans forget to do that. Maybe you don't forget, but maybe you think you don't have anything that's worthwhile. But as we move on here, you're going to find out that you do have an estate, even if you're renting a house or an apartment. Okay, so this is what happens if you die without a will in almost every state of the union. Who gets a share of your property? Now, we're talking about somebody who owns a house. So intestate, 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 not intra or inter. This is intestate, and this is for wills and when you're dying, okay? Intestate succession laws define who your heirs will be. And as I said, they vary from state to state. So, but mostly your property in most cases would be distributed. Let's say you're married, it would be distributed to family members, which would include your spouse, your children, your adult or minor children, adopted children, your parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, and distant relatives. Okay, those are all your family members. Who does not get a share of your estate? stepchildren, longtime partners, and loved ones who are not family members. Ooh, you don't want to do that, okay? Now, if you own a house, these are all things to do before you set up a will or a trust. I want you to know some of these other things that are important to you. When you buy a house, you get a deed. You buy it, you put a down payment down, you get a mortgage. And if you're lucky enough, you pay cash for it, but you get a deed that says this is your property, and it tells you all other kinds of things on it, the description of the property and all sorts of things. You take it in a certain term like tenancy by the entirety, that means everybody, joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. All right, in California, both spouses own the property. We're a joint property state. So you would automatically, if your spouse died, you would automatically receive the other part of the property. So you would own it in entirety. Tenants in common, you can also take, even if you're married. And that means it's more of a partnership. Each spouse owns a share of the property. It could be unequal. Maybe your husband or your wife came in with a ton of money and they bought 3/4 of it, and they want to retain that 3/4 of it. For instance, if you get a divorce. Okay, if one spouse dies, the surviving spouse retains their share, and the other share is divided among the heirs to the person who died. So, example, I'm married, I take and I buy 3/4 of it. My husband has no children, only my stepchildren. So I buy 3/4 of it, and if I die, I can divide my 3/4 up to my husband or to my children, or I can cut one of them out. I could cut the spouse out totally. You need to really research these things, and you can research them without an attorney and without an accountant or anybody else, somebody who writes up the wills and all. They'll explain it all to you, but you can also go online to something like LegalZoom, and they will tell you all the different ways to do this in all the different states. So everything is legal and above board. You should always discuss this with your spouse or whomever you are, or if you're single, and we'll get to that in a minute. You can transfer your property, or as it's called, convey to an heir as a named beneficiary on the document. This would be something like a life insurance policy. So say I have a life insurance policy and I want to leave my life insurance, half of it to my husband and half of it to a child. You can do that. You can specify that on the life insurance policy. And if you're buying a life insurance policy, you're more apt to be talking to somebody on the phone or in person about all the different ways that you should fill out the papers for your life insurance policy. So sometimes you want to put your assets, like your house and maybe your car or stocks and bonds that are intangible or tangible, but you want to put it in something that's a little easier to handle, and that would be a trust. A living trust or an irrevocable trust are two different things. A living trust tells everybody what you want to do if you're lying in the bed and you're never coming back to full consciousness. All right, so they're not distributed in a probate court. So that doesn't have to go through there. The beneficiary named in a trust need not be named in the will, okay? If you die without a will, now this is something that I want you to know. If you're married and childless, then the entire estate is awarded to your spouse. Now I'm reading off of my notes here, which a lot of them I took off of the Epic Times. So if you're married and have children, then your entire estate is divided among your spouse and children in equal shares. If any child has died before you and that child has children, then the deceased child's share will go to your grandchildren. Okay? If you're single and have children, then your entire estate is divided among your children in equal shares. If any child died with you, God forbid, and that child has children, then the deceased child's share will go to your grandchildren. Whew. If you're single and childless, your estate is awarded to your parents equally. One parent's already died, it's divided among your surviving parent and your siblings, including half siblings. Now that's not step sibling. Okay, so if you have remarried and your husband has children and you have children, you can leave your shares to your children only. You do not have to leave it to the children from your husband's previous marriage. All righty. If you have no surviving parents at the time of death, then your entire estate will be divided among your siblings in equal parts. No surviving parents or siblings, it would be divided among the descendants of your siblings, nieces and nephews. No close relatives, then cousins on your mother's side would get half, and on your father's would get half. This is very confusing. This is why you need to get some expert help. When it's divided on the death of a spouse without a will, several factors have to be figured in, like, are you in a community property or separate property state? Like I already told you, California is a joint property state, community property. In a separate property state, the rules are different, and if you are married and have children, usually it goes to the surviving spouse, okay? But some states don't do that. It could be divided between a third to a half for your spouse and the rest of your children or something. So this is why you need to find out what the rules are in your state. If you die without a will and you are in a domestic partnership, so a lot of people in the last 30 years have decided to live together and never get married, okay? That's a domestic partnership. And not all states recognize these. California does recognize that. But you need to look it up for other states. In states that recognize domestic partnerships, such as Connecticut, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, a registered, well, I'll add California to that, a registered domestic partner inherits the same as a married surviving spouse. There is a time limit on this. You can't just have decided to move in with each other last month and, God forbid, your partner passes away. That doesn't mean you automatically get it, because there are rules and regulations on these things. It used to be in California 7 years, and I understand it's been moved up to 11 or something. I don't know, because I'm not in that position. So these are little details you need to check into. All right? If you die without a will and are cohabitating or in a common law marriage, it's kind of the same thing as a domestic partnership. 7 states in 2018 and the District of Columbia, which wants to become a state, they acknowledged common law marriage. That also has a time limit on it, and it used to be the 7 years or something, so much like cohabiting with each other. All right, you need to talk to an attorney. You need to talk to an accountant if you have things. Now let's go over exactly what would be in your estate planning. I don't want to run out of time here. So you think you have no estate. You think you don't need to have a will or any kind of estate planning at all. But let's say if you're an average upper middle class or middle class person, or somebody who owns a home, somebody who owns a car, any of these things. And if you haven't reached that level yet, there's lots of side hustles out there. And if you're just out of college and you think you don't have anything, well, you probably do because your parents have probably given you things. You still need to get something put in place. All right. So any property you own is in your estate, like a house that you live in, or perhaps you have a rental property. That's part of your estate. Whatever you have in your checking or savings account, or something like a retirement account, anything like that, anything that's a bank account, a CD that you leave in the bank for so long and you get a higher percentage of interest on it, that's part of your estate. A Roth IRA, okay? But how about some of the things that you're not thinking about? And I put that in today's title because this often happens to people. Let me find this. Well, I can't find it. You know, that's me. I can't find my notes half the time. So let's say that you have a sister and you're married or single, either way, and you think you don't have an estate because you're renting your apartment. Maybe you haven't paid off your car yet. So that's a whole nother can of worms. You have to figure out what's going to happen to your car, but you're dead. So you can't figure it out. That's something you're leaving for your survivors to figure out. But what if you wanted, but you said it to your daughter, but you didn't say it to your sister, and you want your daughter to have this cookie jar that's been passed down generation to generation, and you want her to have that and continue the inheritance of this cookie jar because all her cousins and before that, the people got cookies out of this cookie jar. So she really wants it. So you leave your sister in your head. Now you're doing this. You don't have a will or any kind of estate plan. You think to yourself, well, you know, I'm leaving this rhinestone bracelet to my sister. So my daughter gets the cookie jar and to heck with everybody else. Okay, you're gone. Now you're gone. Now they go into your apartment and they're looking at things. And your daughter takes the cookie jar and she says, well, Mom always wanted me to have this, so I'm taking this. And her auntie, your sister, says, oh no, she left me this beautiful rhinestone bracelet and she wants you to have that. She told me so. And your daughter is heartbroken because she is imagining down the road getting married and having children and having this wonderful heirloom of a cookie jar. Well, you know why the sister wants it? She was smart. She's been looking at the internet and looking at the things because you've been sick for a while and now you've gone to meet your maker, and she's been investigating the value of the things that her wonderful sister is going to leave to everyone. And she finds out that this rhinestone bracelet is from Woolworth's department store. It's pretty, but it's nothing. It's not even cubic zirconias. It's rhinestones. Then she looks up the cookie jar and she finds out that this cookie jar was made in the late 1800s. It's pottery. It's been around forever. And you know what the value now is? $20,000. So that auntie, the sister of you who passed away, is being devious. Now, you don't want that to happen, do you? So you take an inventory of what you have in your house and you list everything that you want to give to each individual person so that you can get a copy made of your inventory list and put it in your will, which you're going to take care of, and people will know what it is and who gets it. All right. Now, some people try to average it out so everybody gets kind of the same amount of money from the different things that you leave them in your house. All right, it could be a stamp collection. It could be the silverware, the flatware that you dine with, the sterling silver sats, flatware that you dine with. It could be art. It could be paintings. It could be all sorts of small items. It could be your books. Maybe you have a book that somebody gave you when you were a child that's now very valuable. Okay, so you want to make that list and you want to name the people that get it. That's very hard to do when you're ill. It's very difficult at any time to do because it makes you sad. It makes you think about leaving your people, but it depends on what you believe about death. But it is sad because you never know when you are going to pass and you'll never know what's going to happen. So it's important that you take care of this so that the people won't be fighting with each other and feel even worse after it. I forgot we're in the next century. In 2020, the number of people who had a will, the percentage was 32.1% of the population. You know what it is in 2023? It's not much better. It's 34.1%. 2 out of 3 Americans do not have any estate planning. I don't want that to happen to you. Remember, get an attorney, get an accountant, figure it out. You can figure it out on your own. Remember, you can go onto the internet, find things like LegalZoom and all that. I'm not getting paid to say that. I'm just telling you it's available to you. Okay? I think the best thing to do is to find your financial advisor and find an attorney. But whatever you do, you want to make sure it's legally binding so that you can minimize the taxes. And, because your daughter's cookie jar, they can ask you on your taxes if you got anything of value. Now, $20,000 is something of value. So you need to do this to help avoid paying taxes. And you don't want your survivors, your kids, and your siblings to end up with a nightmare trying to figure it all out and fighting with each other. So you should name somebody to manage your finances if you can't do it yourself. And that's called an assignment of power of attorney. So we have that because that also is helpful if your spouse becomes ill and can't sign anything. So perhaps you need to put me in a nursing home and I've had a stroke and I could no longer sign documents. Somebody needs to have my power of attorney for finances. So that's also very important. An advance directive is also called a living will, and it's for life-sustaining after you have some kind of a medical intervention. Say you were in a car crash and they put you on life-saving medical devices and you've been in a coma for 3 weeks and somebody needs to say, should we continue this or should we let them go peacefully? So that's a living will and you need to have that in place. And don't be remiss in doing it. So that is something also that an attorney can help you with, or you can find out how to do it. Now, many of these forms are available in places like Staples, these big Office Depot places and all like that. They have many of the legal forms to fill out. You might want to use that to try to plan your estate distribution. But I think you need, for the final one, you need to get legal help and have your accountant go over it so you haven't made any mistakes. So after you do these two things, get your financial person lined up who has power of attorney and somebody in your living will to make your final decisions for you, then you need to put these things together. In that list that I told you to make an inventory of things that are tangible in your house, like the cookie jar and the bracelet and the coins and the art. Don't forget some of the coins you have. They're trying to get rid of coins, change in the United States. For that matter, they're trying to get rid of dollars too. If you have them under your mattress, you better think about what you're going to do with them now. Trading cards. Maybe you have your trading cards, baseball cards from when you were a little kid. Make an inventory of all those tangible things. And that, I know some of you that are in the arena of being able to have disposable income. A lot of the ladies buy designer handbags, designer shoes, designer clothes. Those are assets. You can sell those on eBay. So don't think because your daughter doesn't want to wear your Chanel cocktail dress that you should let her give it to Goodwill. These things are assets. So be sure you look at those and list those so they know what they have and they can decide what they want to do with it. But you also have intangible assets. That means you can't touch them, okay? Tangible is you can touch them, like your house, jewelry, paintings. You can actually touch them. Okay, intangible are things you can't touch, like savings account, checking accounts, certificates of deposit. That's what we call CDs. Mutual funds, stocks, bonds, workplace retirement plans like a 401k, and individual retirement accounts. Okay, now I know when you get a 401k through your company, and that's one of the benefits that you get when you sign up. Most companies will match what you put in or have some kind of plan, and they have you fill out a lot of papers. And on those papers is who the beneficiary would be if you pass away. So check those out. And if you don't understand it, go to HR, Human Resources, and they'll help you. You should have a copy of that in your file if you work for a corporation or any kind of business that provides that. So be sure you have copies of it so you'll know and your survivors will know, all right? Life insurance policies, make sure somebody knows about your life insurance policies. And that goes with also a health savings account. Now, I know those became very popular in the 90s. I don't know personally anybody who has a health savings account, but if you do, you need to, you need to make sure you have a beneficiary of that, because if you haven't used any of it, there's money there and it should be earning interest that you've been paying into it. Then if you have a small business or any kind of business that you have, like for instance, a podcast, you need to be sure that there is a succession going on there. Who gets your half of the business? All right. Maybe you have a small cafe, same thing. Any kind of business you have. You might be a single person like I am. I don't mean single married. I mean, I'm the sole proprietor of my podcast. So any advertising or anything else I have in an account for my podcast, I need to leave to a beneficiary and somebody who could close down or take over the business. Don't forget to do that. But you also need to list your outstanding liabilities, because guess what? Before any of this is yours, all the liabilities this person has, you have to settle. And that means credit cards, car payments, any other debts, your mortgage on your house, for instance, any kind of debts you have. Now, you should get a certificate of death, a death certificate right away, as fast as you can get it, because you need to show this to people when you're settling up the estate. Don't forget to do this. Excuse me for licking my thumb. You need to take care of your children in this will too, of who would take care of it if, God forbid, you were both in a car accident. When you have minor children or even children in college, what have you, you need to specify who's going to take over raising your children and how the finances are going to be handled for that. Don't forget that. That's very important. And that's when I think, if you have children, I suggest you don't do any of this on your own. You get an attorney and work with your attorney and accountant. So it will all be straightened out. You can also get a limited power of attorney, and that's if you want them to handle just one thing, like the sale of your house, something like that. And don't just give it to anybody. Give it to somebody you know that knows about finances, knows about what your estate is, who your relatives are, how you feel about them. It could be your best friend, for goodness sakes, if she's been like a family member to you. Or maybe it is your attorney that you've dealt with forever and ever. So pick them carefully. And that is about all I want to do. So remember what you want to take care of to maintain this. You want to get somebody to help you. You want to have a will, a succession of all of your assets. And you want to make sure that you provide for your children or a parent you're caring for or somebody else. Get to it today. Get these things. It will make your survivor's life much easier. Life insurance advisors, if you don't have life insurance and you have children, you better think about it now. You know the difference between term and whole life insurance? We'll get an insurance expert on and we'll have them explain that to you. It's difficult if you have any money at all. And if you don't, get that side hustle going. We're not going to take care of everybody forever. We're running out of money in this country. If you can't work, there's Social Security if you have disability or something like that. Wills are not required by law, but it would make your life more simple and that of your survivors a whole lot more simple. So go out and find what it is that you need to do. Like I said, these forms are available in the big office supply stores, and that can guide you through what you need. And then you can take it to your attorney, maybe not have 3 hours with him, maybe have 1.5, something, if you filled out these papers, and he can look at it and say, well, you forgot to put in your sister who's lived with you for 20 years. So, you can do things like that. Do it like that. That can cut down on your expenses. If you are really flat out broke right now and you're a senior and you've had these things and maybe you've owned your house forever and you don't have a will, you need one now. And if you have no money at all for extra cash, call up legal aid. They do make exceptions. That's not the business they're really in. They're into more big lawsuits that nobody can afford to, like helping you file a class action suit against somebody or something like that, or a discrimination suit and you don't have any money. It's for people who don't have the cash flow to hire an attorney. So don't take advantage of it. They will screen you, but they will tell you after they screen you and take you on, they will help you write a will. And there may be a small fee or what have you, but call them up because they do make exceptions and you just have to fill out an application and that will be okay. So I hope I helped you today with thinking about planning your estate and planning for the future of your children, your heirs, whomever it may be, your spouse, your companion. And I'm wishing and praying to God that nothing happens to you now, because I'm not saying that I want something to happen to you. I want you to live a long and healthy life. But this would really help your survivors in a big, big way. Okay, remember what I always say. Cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today. Thank you for listening in.